insurance. Yesterday, there was some interesting news around the Cleveland Browns and the NFL. Anytime there's quarterback news, anytime there's quarterback changes, depth chart issues, etc., it always becomes a big deal. And the fact that the Cleveland Browns traded away Joe Flacco, who's going to start this week, Zach Taylor of the Bengals announced, against Smalls' Packers. They trade away Joe Flacco. And shame on me. I will take the blame on this. I said this to Nuno, our producer. I'm like, I just worked this week under the thought process that Shedeur is QB2. I never even asked the question on our show of, hey, are we sure about that? I just made an assumption. But Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Browns, is not even naming, forget who QB1 is. He's not naming one of the most polarizing players in the league based on our opinions of the player and the person, QB2. So I ask the question now, if he doesn't get promoted from QB3 to QB2, what happens?
What I think happens is that you put even more pressure on Dylan Gabriel in his second start than he had in his NFL debut.
If he's not promoted.
If Shedeur Sanders is not promoted to QB2.
Why is that?
Because then all of a sudden you start to ask all of these questions as to why. There are only 2 quarterbacks on the active roster right now. So if you don't promote him to QB2, that being Shedeur Sanders, and you decide to elevate Bailey Zappe off the practice squad, who you didn't think enough of to have on your active roster weeks ago, it makes it seem as if you have an agenda other than allowing the quarterback competition to be a meritocracy. And that's the part that seems a little bit awkward. And that's why I said yesterday, Kevin Stefanski has got to be really careful in terms of how he handles this situation between Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and what ends up happening in terms of the runway that Dylan Gabriel gets to show the franchise what he is versus the opportunities that present themselves for Shedeur, including being elevated from the third string quarterback to the backup.
And I guess my confusion comes in when I try to think of what that agenda might be. I know we've discussed a potential different perspective from the front office and the coaching staff on the quarterback.
Yes.
But Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year. Tommy Reese, offensive coordinator, widely regarded as a very smart football mind. Why would they not want to elevate Shedeur Sanders if they thought he was ready for the job?
I'm not going to put in Tommy Reese on this because this is a head coaching decision. So I'm not going to include him. I'm not going to rope him in here. All I will say is this. When it comes to the readiness factor of Shedeur Sanders can absolutely go out there and execute the game plan that we saw from Dylan Gabriel against Minnesota Vikings in the international series in London. He can absolutely do that. Dylan Gabriel completed 19 passes. 14 of those completions went to backs and tight ends. Only 3 completions were more than 9 air yards. Shedeur Sanders can go out there and do that. He absolutely can. So when it comes to the readiness of it all, you got to miss me with that. Like, the Minnesota Vikings recognized how basic the Cleveland Browns offense was, and they decided to play a way that we never see them play, which is not blitzing at a high rate. Their blitz rate on the season is 36% of defensive snaps. Against the Cleveland Browns, it was 16. You know why they didn't blitz? Because they didn't have to, because the offense was so basic. So when everybody wants to push the narrative of Shedeur Sanders not being ready and he has to continue to develop because Kevin Stefanski can't trust him in the game, or Shedeur Sanders has too much street ball in his game, you ain't got to be a rocket scientist from NFL quarterback standards to go out there and execute the game plan that Kevin Stefanski implemented.
CU great Shedeur Sanders told to request release if Browns Kevin Stefanski snubs him again originally appeared on the Sporting News. Add the Sporting News as a preferred source by clicking here. The Cleveland Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round of the NFL Draft last April, and things have been far from ideal since. Sanders has made headlines, but not for the right reasons. On Tuesday, veteran quarterback Joe Flacco was traded to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cleveland Browns' decision to trade Joe Flacco to the Cincinnati Bengals on Tuesday was such a shocking move that even the Browns were surprised by it. CBS Sports' John Breach wrote, "With Flacco gone, the expectation was that Sanders would finally step into the backup quarterback role in Cleveland. Fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel is currently the starter." However, another twist emerged on Wednesday when head coach Kevin Stefanski declined to name Sanders as the backup. Browns HC Kevin Stefanski was non-committal today on whether rookie Shedeur Sanders or practice squad quarterback Bailey Zappe would be the team's backup quarterback, ESPN's Adam Schefter posted. This was another surprising development, as it appeared Sanders was the clear choice for the number 2 role. If Sanders remains third on the depth chart, former Fox Sports analyst Emmanuel Acho believes he should consider asking for his release. "I'm so confused. If Stefanski makes practice squad player Bailey Zappe QB2, Shedeur has to request to be released. He'll never play in Cleveland," Acho wrote. Follow the sporting news on WhatsApp at this point. It's hard to make sense of what's going on in Cleveland. Sanders appears to be stuck without a real opportunity. Either he's not being given a fair shot, or he's doing little to convince the Browns he deserves one. That if Sanders does end up requesting a release, it will be interesting to see what happens next in his career. The Browns are expected to make a decision soon, but it would be unusual and telling if Sanders is passed over for Zappe on the depth chart. Browns coach accused of sabotaging Shedeur Sanders amid fresh blow with rookie urged to request release. Jamie Gordon, U.S. sports writer, published 12:32, October 9, 2025, updated 13:04. October 9, 2025. Shedeur Sanders stands on the sideline for the Cleveland Browns. Click to share on Facebook. Opens in new window. Click to share on X/Twitter. Opens in new window. Shedeur Sanders began the season buried at 4th on the Cleveland Browns depth chart, with Joe Flacco, who began the season as number 1, traded to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Kenny Pickett also on his way. The 5th-rounder is now only behind fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel. Play Video Talk Sport's NFL expert reveals what Joe Flacco's trade to the Cincinnati Bengals means for Shedeur Sanders after Flacco was benched for the Week 5 clash against the Minnesota Vikings in London. Gabriel took over as starter with Shedeur the number 3 option. It was presumed that Sanders would back up the 3rd-rounder against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Sunday, but head coach Kevin Stefanski may have other ideas. Practice squad quarterback Bailey Zappe is also in the mix, and Stefanski refused to be drawn on who would be number 2 on Wednesday. "I'll let the week play out and make a decision later on that," said the 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. More on NFL. Browns are paying 8 quarterbacks with $41.6 million cap hit as Shedeur closes in on Job. Sanchez family release statement, with Fox analyst facing possible prison sentence. "I always have to be mindful of our players and our players' development. I want to make sure I'm always doing what's best for our player and, of course, our team. Like last week, with the change to Dillon, you've got to think long and hard about that, because these are young players that you're so invested in their development." Sanders continues to work on his craft, and Stefanski didn't reveal any specific milestones he was looking for. Most read in NFL. Andy Reid breaks silence on Chris Jones controversy as Chiefs star makes drastic decision. Andy Reid breaks silence on Chris Jones controversy as Chiefs star makes drastic decision. UNC assistant makes Wild Bill Belichick claim as Tar Heels coach told to quit now. UNC assistant makes Wild Bill Belichick claim as Tar Heels coach told to quit now. Stephen A. has words for calculated Deion Sanders as Browns make statement on Shedeur. Stephen A. has words for calculated Deion Sanders as Browns make statement on Shedeur. Pat McAfee leaves J.J. Watt lost for words with sly jab over birthday broadcast assignment. Pat McAfee leaves J.J. Watt lost for words with sly jab over birthday broadcast assignment. "I wouldn't say there's one thing you need to see," he added. "In my role, I have to do what's best for my players and our team. I'm very invested in our player development, our young players' development, and our quarterback development. I just want to make sure I'm doing what's right for our players." Shedeur Sanders stands on the sideline for the Cleveland Browns. Sanders' name has made headlines since he declared for the draft credit. Getty X. This content is provided by X, which may be using cookies and other technologies. To show you this content, we need your permission to use cookies. You can use the buttons below to amend your preferences to enable X cookies or to allow those cookies just once. You can change your settings at any time via the privacy options. Enable cookies, allow cookies once. This is not a group you have to prod into doing extra, whether that's the weight room, meeting room, out on the fields. We're really pushing to improve, and I see that from Shedeur and all these young guys, which is the fun part for us as coaches to see all the work you put in show up and how these guys are performing. Browns fans accuse Kevin Stefanski of sabotage